Faith can feel like hearts and butterflies until someone lights a match and burns it all to the ground. Welcome to the Burning Butterflies podcast.
The sad thing is that there's abuse of every kind within the church. But the spiritual abuse is the stuff that just
What's a place there shouldn't be abuse? Like, there just shouldn't be abuse in a place that claims Jesus.
Well, it ruins your soul. If you're new here, we suggest listening to our prologue episode first. This is the story of two women's journey through spiritual abuse and escaping from toxic church culture while finding hope in Christ.
Sometimes it's just the facts, and if you get offended by it, that's a you issue. And if we can't be mature enough to have these conversations, even if some of the topics are difficult, then shame on us.
All right.
Okay.
We are back, and today we are diving into Melissa's love bombing / drinking the Kool-Aid episode. Because what took me 11 years to do, Melissa's an overachiever, and she did it in like a year and a half.
Yeah.
So call it overachieving, call it ADHD, riding the dopamine, whatever you want to attribute this to.
Okay, here's my disclaimer.
I say it in a joking, loving way because...
No, but let's all just remember that this version of Melissa has
trauma,
more unresolved trauma than my body can actually contain.
Yep. Has yet have therapy as an adult.
Just learned I don't have boundaries. I have very unhealthy or lack of coping skills. Okay. I am a big ball of mess. Okay. So I go to church and I hear a sermon.
Hold on. I want to point out, you feel like you're a mess.
At that point, I was a mess.
Yeah.
There's just I didn't feel like I was a mess.
Like you said something before, and I want, because you were talking about you had this inner feeling that you were incapable.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. So here's the dynamic. This is the dichotomy of me. I have just cleaned the slate, right? And this is a, once again, messy Missy, right?
Yep.
Melissa made a mess of her life. There's a mess to clean up. So we've cleaned it up. We've cleaned the slate. I'm good. I'm moving forward.
Yeah.
Okay. But the truth of the matter is I am so much of a mess. And I do have this underlying, I'm incompetent because I've screwed it all up. But I'm also very hopeful that I'm going, this is me and who I am. But it's totally to be expected. Like, I just make messes. I make messes of my life. I'm incompetent. I can't adult well. If I'm going to do something, I screw it up. Like, this is the ADHD mantra. Like, honestly, just constantly feeling like a failure and feeling incompetent. But who I want to be, I'm living my best life because I done ditched the ex-husband that was the drinker and I've clean slate, moving on. I'm confident in who I'm going to be and I'm going to do it right. And you walk
into a church.
And I walk into a church. The pastor says drugs and alcohol. I don't even know how he said it or whatever, right? So he's talking about drugs and alcohol in his sermon. In some context, it totally relates. This sermon happened the first time I walk into the church. Okay, so I walk into this church and I'm going to tell you right now, at that moment, I decided that this was my church and I wasn't going anywhere. Okay, there's a process that happened over the next year and a half, but the God's honest truth is I left that sermon that day and I was like, I found my home.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I show up the next week.
So leading up to that, had you ever been to a church that talked about like real life stuff like that before? Like so blatantly?
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
So I had been to a church previously that was very down to earth, very real. And yes, they worked a lot with the public. They worked a lot with the homeless community. They worked a lot with, addicts and stuff like that. So I know those conversations probably were going on, but from the pulpit, not necessarily.
Okay.
This was a verse by verse teaching church,
Mhm.
which I really appreciated. And to be honest with you, I wasn't at that place in that moment when I was at that church.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd had some. This is the church I was going to when I was homeless.
Mhm.
And these people were just so loving and so kind. But the way that Tom gave this sermon from the pulpit wasn't a we help people like this. It was a personalized
It was like, we
you
know some of you here may struggle with this.
yeah, and I just remember because I don't remember what was said, so that's hard for me to tell you what he
Mhm.
said, but my feeling and my understanding was wow, this guy gets it.
Mhm.
I didn't think that he had participated in those things or had a past of those
Mhm.
things, but you could definitely tell that I thought this guy was getting in the ruts with people.
Yeah, he's
Like
willing to get down in the trenches
yeah,
and
this is a place where they will have open conversations and they understand that people are messy and that these things have like
Mhm.
that was the impression that I got.
Yeah, okay.
And a lot of that had to do with where I was freshly out. Like it has to do with me and where I was at too.
Uh-huh.
But this is, I will say, the first church that the way that that sermon was presented, I had never heard a sermon like that ever in my life, ever. And so I go back the next week and I'm sitting in the rows and it's worship time. We're singing and, the music's going. And 2 rows ahead of me are these amazing broad shoulders. And these broad shoulders are in a Harley Davidson shirt with like wings on the back.
Mhm.
And I was like, dang, them's are some shoulders.
This man.
This man. I was like, whew. I think the chairs are getting hot in here. And I was like, and don't ask me why okay, this is what you're going to get when I tell my stories. You're going to get the crazy and insanity that is me. And I'm okay with that. So inside of me is either a black woman or a gay man.
And you don't know who's going to come out.
I haven't decided which yet because there's a diva. That's all I got to say. And that diva is either a black woman or a gay man. Okay. So when I talk to myself sometimes, okay, so in that tone, in that styling, that is how I speak to myself. I'm like, girl, you are going to hell. Like, it is worship, and you are checking out these broad shoulders in front of you and having some very impure thoughts. Knock it off, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then I happen to notice that there's a woman in the row with him,
Okay.
and there's also some children. Now, is this woman and children his? I have absolutely no idea.
Like, they're not like he doesn't have his arm around
Yeah, no,
her.
there's
or
no
they're just sitting in the same room.
Yeah, there's no indication that they're a couple and that these are his kids, but this is my assumption because why else
Yeah,
would
context clues. Yeah.
hello, right? And I have no idea who this woman was. Absolutely no idea. Like even to this day, I'm like, it was dark. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the light that's shown on the shoulders with the,
Oh,
wings
yeah.
on the back,
The back
totally
lighting.
could see clearly. I'm outing myself. Okay, so that happens the second time I go to church. Now, I started going to the church in April. So things that were being promoted was the women's retreat, which happens in May.
Mhm.
And it's promoted like I wanted to go.
Oh,
All the
yeah.
women have these matching shirts and they're all are you going to retreat? Are you going to retreat? So now,
Yeah.
mind you, in the first month that
This
I'm
was
there,
the big push time
Yeah.
for retreat.
I was there for a month. And the first month that I'm there, are you going to retreat? Oh, it's okay that you're new. You could go to I can't go to retreat. Like I can't even get myself together enough to figure that out. Like
Yeah.
whatever I got going on in my life, figuring out how I'm not gonna ask for money.
Yeah.
Like I understand now that I could have been like gotten a scholarship, but it wasn't happening for me. I needed like 6 months to prepare how I was going to go to something at
Yeah.
that point, not 30 days. So everybody's got a shirt. Everything's great, right? So I want to go to retreat. So that's May. Over the summer, there's this huge park festival.
Then
that
we
the
would have
church
done the
puts
big
on.
summer in the park
Yep.
event. Yep.
And I realized at that moment that this is the church. I had been to one of these before. I went to one the year before.
Yeah. Because
And-
every summer we would put this on in the park. It was a big free event
huge
for the
free
community.
event for the community because Jesus is free.
Yep. Bounce houses, food, prizes, games.
Before I ever
everything
went
free.
to the church, I went to this park event and I was amazed Like, absolutely, like, I stood there the whole time with my kids and my ex-husband. We'll get there. So we were at this park event the year before I went to the church, and I was amazed at the fact that this type of event will be put on for free,
Mhm.
and that it was such a powerful message, that because everything in the world costs, and you've
Yeah.
been to things and you got to pay for things, and everybody wants money, and churches always want money. That's a big issue for a lot of people, but here's this event that's totally free, just like the gift of Jesus is free. And this is amazing. So fast forward a year.
Oh, which that's a good thing to bring up, because at that point we didn't have a building.
Yeah, no building.
And so we were still meeting
And I
at
had no
the high
idea
school.
what church put that on. I just
Oh,
know
okay.
a church in town put on this park event. I didn't know it was free until I got there. And that's why I was so, I mean, it's flabbergasted
Yeah.
that it
Okay.
was all free. I was so blessed as a mom, of a single mom
Yeah.
with a tag along ex-husband with 5 kids, and we didn't have to pay for anything. And we
Which-
ate, and my kids could have as much as they wanted. They got their face. For a mom, I'm going to cry. Like,
Yeah.
it truly was an amazing thing. But for a mom with 5 kids to have, yes, yes, you can get a tattoo. Yes, you can get your face painted on a real tattoo.
Yeah.
Yes, you can get a snow cone. Yes, you can get cotton candy. Yes, you can ride the bounce house. Yes, you can do this. And because a church wanted to love on the community, absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Which, so you said your ex-husband tags along. Like you guys have a good like friendship relationship.
Yeah. So
Okay.
this is the best place probably just to insert this so that you got to have context.
Yeah.
Okay. So my ex-husband currently rents my second house on my property. So
Yeah.
I have a property.
You have like an apartment.
It has like
Yeah.
an apartment in the back, right? Like a mother-in-law suite,
Yeah.
right? Basically. So I have a property. It has a back house. That is where my ex-husband lives. Okay.
Like right now in real
Right
time.
now, currently in real time.
Yeah.
Okay. We co-parent,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there's absolutely, my kids laugh because they're like, you complain every single thing that I say about my ex-husband, about their dad,
Mm-hmm.
when I'm complaining, when he's complaining, he says the exact same things about me, like word
Yeah.
for word. My daughter's like, you guys are hilarious. She goes, and she's also pointed out, she goes, you guys don't like each other very much. I've deducted.
Hence we got divorced.
But you guys do well at like hanging out and getting along with each other. Like, she goes, and this is bizarre. And I'm like, that's just how it is. It's just how it is. So give you the full spectrum.
Yeah.
So we have a very similar upbringing. We've just been connected,
Mm-hmm.
Ever since.
Yeah.
And so that's just what works for us. It's weird, but he's my friend.
Yeah.
And we co-parent.
Which I think is so awesome for your girls.
Yeah.
I wanted to clarify that
Yeah.
because like I know you
Yeah.
and his relationship.
Yes.
So I wanted to clarify.
Okay, so
because
understand.
it could seem very like
you're like, why is your ex-husband always
you
around?
divorced each other, but you're taking him all these places.
Yeah. So
Okay.
so now that you have this context,
Yes.
you will see how because he'll pop up throughout this entire story because
Yeah.
he's been around. But we got divorced. Like, there's
Yeah.
no relationship there. We drove to the courthouse together.
Yeah, you had a lovely date.
We had a
Divorced
lovely
each
date.
other.
I picked him up. We went to the courthouse. We got a divorce. He's lived in and out of my home over the years because he's just part of the family. I mean, this is
Yeah.
my kids' dad. And so he's had his struggles. I've had mine. And that's been a constant of like, as your children's parent,
Yeah.
that's what you do. I can't do anything against him because it would hurt my children.
So you go to the summer.
Yeah. So
event.
this is great context because he's going to
Yes.
show up. So now we don't have to explain it again.
Mhm.
We can pick up right there. So we go to this summer event, and I don't know what churches put it on. We're there, and I am just amazed by the message and what this event is. So fast forward a year, I go to the church in April.
Mhm.
I can't go to the retreat in May, even though I wanted to. You come to the summer, and this event is being put on. Now, I'm 3 months in. I volunteered at this event.
Oh yeah.
And I am so excited because this is the event that I went to.
Mhm.
And this is awesome. I didn't know this was the church. that put on that awesome event. This place is fantastic. Any church that would do that. I mean, I almost cried telling you about the experience.
Yeah.
That is how ecstatic I am that I am now a part of this church that puts on. I'm all in because any church that's going to reach me like it did is a church that I want to be a part of. And so I volunteered at that event that year. Also, that summer was a Franklin Graham evangelist event, and it was called Rock the Range.
Okay.
And it was going to happen in August. So they send out stuff to the local churches of like, hey, you can co-labor with us. And this is the first time I heard this word, co-labor. Okay. But I'm like, Rock the Range, I'm signing up for everything at this point. But I'm like, that sounds great. You know, rock concert, I'm totally into music. I do sound, you know, like, yes, I'm all in. So I don't know what co-laboring is, but I'm going to go, right? Yeah. So I sign up and then
You had no idea it was free, unpaid volunteer.
Yeah, I don't know what. But apparently I got to go to a training to be a co-laborer. So I am like 5 months in at this point. And I'm volunteering for all kinds of stuff. And I'm taking this training now because I want to do that Rock the Range event. And so a couple of things that happened in this time frame were that guy that I saw the second week at church, I never saw again.
Yeah, Mr. Shoulders.
Mr. Shoulders. Okay. So I never see him again. Then all of a sudden he pops up at this testimony night. The church at the time was like really big into testimonies. Like for some reason there was a lot of testimony things. Like they even did one of the main holidays had testimonies. And like one of my neighbors had gone to church there and was like, that was weird. And I was like, no, that's what you do.
Well, because a lot of that had to do with the fact that like at this point, over 80% of the church or something like that had taken Master Life. And that is a huge part of one of the Master Life books is you learn how to share your testimony effectively in order to bring glory to the Lord.
Yeah, it was a big focus. And so I'm volunteering for everything. So I go to this testimony and I was like on a Sunday, there may be like 20, 30 people there. I don't know. Paint and everything, be a part of everything.
Because you're trying to do it right.
Trying to do it right. There's Broad Shoulders guy. So I get there, I sit down and Broad Shoulders guy gets up. And a lady with him. And he says, hi, my name is Froggy and I am Pastor Thompson. And I was like, oh.
Dude, I've been vibing on as the pastor.
This is an interesting turn of events, right? And you're like, oh, okay. And so this whole testimony is about, we want to thank you guys, our church family, for praying for us. Everything has been, like we've had our struggles, but we finally, are going to make things work. And God has been so wonderful and active in our life. And I have finally found my partner for life and everything's going to be wonderful and great. And I'm not being sarcastic. It was weird. Mm-hmm. But I want to be very the language is so important because it plays an effect later on. We already had the spoiler alert that I married Froggy.
Yeah.
And so this is why you'll start to see his timeline is very important in my beginnings at the church. But it was this very, everybody in the room knew what he was talking about but me. It's kind of how I felt because it was a very vague but poignant, very specific things he was talking about. So that happens, and right around the same time, I'm really not sure what order these two things happened in, but I do believe they happened in the testimony night first, and then that big summer park event. Mm-hmm. So at the big summer park event, which I already told you that I volunteered at, it's cleanup time, and I'm cleaning up, and I see Froggy at a table talking to a woman, not testimony chick, she's talking to a different woman, and he's holding hands with her across the table.
Oh, so it's not like we're just sitting here having a chat.
No, they're holding hands across the table. So, she has her hand on the table and he has his hand over hers.
And it's clearly not can I pray for you?
Yeah, right. We're not holding hands praying, but they're across the table, holding hands.
They're together.
Having a conversation. So, me being the people watcher, I think that's the politically correct term. I'd say stalker, but I don't want to get in trouble. Me being the people watcher that I am, I'm like, what the heck? Okay, so you were just at a testimony night talking about how
testimony chick's your forever person.
Yeah, this is my perfect partner that God has given me, and we've had our struggles, but we are now working it out, and everything's wonderful. You're at a park holding hands with this other chick. And I was like, that is so bizarre. Okay.
Did you feel kind of crazy for a minute? Like,
no, I was
I think
so
I would've-
intrigued.
I think I would have been like, did I hear it right the first time? Like, maybe I'm.
No, I mean, I know I heard. No, I'm
Yeah.
like, that's a fact, like burned into my head. Like that's
So
like,
now you're like, what is going
yeah,
on?
I am so intrigued. What the heck? Right? I'm like, this is weird. Like, it's just weird.
Yeah.
So that's July. We have the Evangelist, the Rock the Range concert in August, the end of August.
Mm-hmm.
So we are within a span of like 3 months now that
Yeah.
these two events and now this third event has happened. And so I volunteered, and I'm walking from where I volunteered at, because I was in a room collecting the testimony cards and grouping them up in areas so that they could send them to local churches, so local churches could do a follow-up. And I'm done, and I'm walking across to the field where the concert's at, and I run into Tom and Charlotte in the crosswalk. And he's like, hey, how's it going? Good. How are you guys? And
so prior to this, had you like ever had a conversation with them other than just like saying hi, like in the lobby?
I'm sure.
Yeah. But like, they clearly recognize you as like you go
Yeah.
to church. Okay.
I mean, the church is small enough.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
okay. So like I've been to bigger churches where like nobody knows who you are.
Yeah.
And actually that's why I like to go to a bigger church sometimes, is because nobody knows you're there.
Yeah.
You could sit there, you could participate, you can even go there for a year and nobody knows who you are. Okay.
Yeah.
So some people might think that's a bad thing. I find a great purpose in it. I could be a wallflower
Yeah.
and not get involved. And that's not even a recent thing. Like that
Yeah.
has been something I learned, before I even moved to Colorado,
years
that like
ago.
you just go to a mega church. And people are like, you go there? Yeah, I've been there for 5 years. I go to the 8 o'clock service. You're like, oh, I go to the 11. You never
Yeah.
meet each other.
Yeah.
So, but this is a small enough church that like, I mean, I've had some, I don't like name tags. I guess I put these weird stories in so people can understand my neuroticy, I guess. I don't know if these stories are helpful or not, to be honest with you. This is
Oh
me.
my gosh, I forgot Name Tag Sunday until you literally just said that.
Yeah.
How weird and creepy did we come off?
I don't like name tags because if you don't know me, that's a problem.
Yeah.
I am a social butterfly. I talk to everybody. I want to know everybody. I want to be in everybody's business. Unless I don't, then I go to a mega church and I sit in the back row and you'll never know I'm there. All right. So I am walking across this crosswalk and I run into Tom and Charlotte and they're like, oh, hey, how's it going? And I was like, good. How are you? This is fun, blah, blah, blah. And then Tom says, where's your husband? And I was like, I don't have a husband. And he's like, well, what about that guy that comes to church with you? That's not your husband? And I was like, no, that's my ex-husband. And he was like, your ex-husband? I'm like, yeah. And it's like that moment where you both realize that the conversation is going to take 3 hours to totally explain.
Well, because it's like, how do you say, like, well, my ex-husband, like, we really are, like, we work better now that we're divorced than we ever did when we
Right.
were married.
Right.
And we do both attend your church.
Right. People realize that we have the same kids.
Yeah.
So, of course, they naturally assume.
Just like what you were doing to Froggy and
Right.
trying to place him in where do you stand, who are you with, all
Right.
of that. People were doing
People
that to
were
you.
doing that. They're like, okay, this is the dad, this is the mom. So
Yeah.
then right away you
It's
just assume
natural.
that
It
we're
is
married.
a natural thing. that
Totally
people
get it. Yeah. And so the next words out of his mouth after that awkward silence was, oh, my son is single. To which Charlotte backhands him in the shoulder and is like, stop it. And I was like, oh, okay. Have a good day. Kept walking.
do. So Froggy's single.
So, well, no, his son is single.
So you assumed it was Froggy?
So I assumed it was Froggy because at this point, that's the only son that I know that he has.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, that's weird because I've seen him.
Now with two different women.
We got Summer Chick, we got Testimony Chick, and I kid you not, I leave that awkward conversation in the crosswalk and I'm walking towards the field of people, the sea of people.
Yeah.
And sitting there towards the back is Froggy and Summer Chick hanging out at Rock the Range together. And I'm like, your son ain't single, bud. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
His son ain't single, right?
Yeah.
And that's where we go from that. And I say that because I found out later, like he had another son. All of a sudden, this other son shows up at church. I don't see Froggy again. at church.
Yeah.
Like he shows up so randomly. It's like the second time I went to the church, then months later, then a month later,
Yeah.
then a month later. And so then I find out now he's got this other son that shows up.
Yeah. But his other son is significantly younger.
Yeah, significantly young. Like, yeah. So it's like now it's really odd because now I have this awkward conversation where he's like, well, my son is single. And his other son is really not near my age at all.
No.
The other one, the one I married, is. I mean, we're like a year apart or so. It's like I'm so confused at this point.
Yeah.
And this is in my world consuming me because now I'm like, what's the details? Well, it doesn't help that the younger son is coming to church by himself with his two kids because him and his wife are having a separation at the time. Yeah. Okay, so they're separated. The other one's nowhere to be found. But he's been seen with two different women. Right? And I'm like, this whole dynamic is boggling my mind. Okay. So this is where I'm at. I've been volunteering for everything. I'm totally sold out for the church and serving and doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And that takes us then, I mean, you've got, that was August, you got September, October, there's a fall festival and it's like a couple days before Halloween. Mm-hmm. And of course I go to that because I'm going to everything, right? Mm-hmm. So I go to the fall festival, the trunk or treat. Guess who shows up? Now I haven't seen him since August. Mm-hmm. He's not been to church, not shown up, nothing. Shows up in October at trunk or treat. And I'm opening the door to go out of the church to the parking lot. And he's walking in the church and he's got some friend with him, some male friend. I don't know. So they were there for like, I don't know, it's weird. So anyway, him and some guy. Community service. Him and some guy. Yeah, it could definitely be. Like you could definitely tell the lifestyle of the friend. Yeah. Okay. And probably his. I'm just blind. We were talking about this earlier. I have a type. It's called toxic.
So at this point, you're in that Bible study that you talked about in our marriage episode.
Yes. So I am taking the fundamental help me how to be a proper wife and woman as a Christian Bible study.
And isn't it, again,
created to be his helpmeet by Debbie Pearl. And it is a how to sit down, shut up, and your whole world is about you, man.
And again, like we talked about in our marriage episode, don't go buy these books. Yeah. Like, don't give them money. But like this book was so fundamental, and so like your desires should not matter to you. It's all about what your husband wants to do, blah, 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 all these things. Yeah. Really the core of what Come As You Are taught women, whether or not they sat right women down and they said, this is what you need to do as a wife, or it just was subtly brought up in conversation.
Well, and for the fact that this was a Bible study that, because at Come As You Are, you could not do a Bible study in the church unless it was approved.
Yeah.
So this was an approved book.
Either Tom or Charlotte had approve it.
They said, yes, this is what we want women to learn about marriage.
And so more than likely, since it was a women's only study, Charlotte probably approved.
Right. Right.
Which meant she had to have read the book and she signed off on it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm taking this Bible study. I'm volunteering for everything. And I go to the trunk or treat and I'm walking out the doors to the parking lot from the church building. And Froggy walks by and makes a very inappropriate comment about my Halloween costume. Okay. It was not an inappropriate Halloween costume. I was a bag of M&Ms. So I, of course, was like, I don't know what I was like. So we are cleaning up trunk or treat. Okay. And him and I end up cleaning up the sound system. Like I'm over there, I'm working. He comes over there, starts helping me carry the big speakers back into the church. And so we're having a conversation. Now, mind you, I'm going to go to some friends who also go to the church Halloween party that night because they're having a costume party. And so I have this plan to go, and a lot of these people are married. And so it's a lot of husbands and wives. And then there's just me. And so I'm going to go. And I was like doing my darndest to like drop hints, and I was like, because he was there by himself.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I haven't seen the other lady, summer chick, in a while.
And so I was like, I got invited to this Halloween party and I have to go all by myself. Hint, hint. And he's just like, yeah, sounds like fun. And so I do it. I'm like trying again. Like, seriously, I'm going to this Halloween party by myself, right?
It'd be really nice if someone could
It
come
would
with
be
me.
so nice if somebody would
Were
go.
you twirling your hair?
Oh my God, Frank is sick. When I see a 35-year-old woman act like a 12-year-old, God. Yeah, pretty much. I was pretty much doing everything. So I'm not good at this. Like, okay, another side note. I have never
had to flirt in your life.
Yeah, like it's not me. I'm like, up till this point, like totally different. Like I've never not been like, I don't know. That's not me. Like there's never been this like, I'm not allowed to go after what I want. I have to be demure and quiet and submissive and wait.
Because you've been in this study.
I don't do that very
you've been
well.
Preconditioned.
Yeah, so I'm trying. Like I'm really trying to be like, and here where normally I'd be like, hey, we should go to this Halloween party tonight. That would be me.
Yeah.
That's me before.
Yeah.
But me trying to do it the right way, there's nothing about me that is like that. You should ask me. Oh my God. Okay. And so it was definitely being flirty, but he didn't ask to take me or to go with me or anything. Right. And I'm like, very angry about that.
I don't know. I would have been like, was I too subtle? Did he not pick up on it?
Yeah, like I don't. Yeah,
or is he just not into me?
So now, of course, as a girl, I'm totally like, I just watched like he's just not that into you with the kids, and so now I'm like, yeah, I was doing the whole like, did that mean something? Did that not? What did I do? Like I'm totally being neurotic about it. So we stopped cleaning up. And he's like, so we're talking, like we're having this conversation, whatever we were talking about, I don't know. And then we end up running into Charlotte and she took one look at us and he was like, oh yeah, we just got done is there anything else you need? Mom, anything else you need? She took one look at the both of us. Like she eyed him to me, to him. And she was like, no.
So that was Charlotte's way of, I'm picking up the vibes.
Yeah. And she
I'm
was
not
like,
down with it.
And I knew that she was saying, no. Yeah. You two, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like with kids who have like dated people and they're like, and I'm like, oh, nope. No. We're not doing that, right? So
I understand. Come over for dinner?
Nope. I totally understand the no now.
Yeah.
Okay, so that happens. So that's October. And then regularly he would start showing up at church now. Mm-hmm. And he would always make his way into my vicinity. However, he also made his way into many single moms' vicinities.
So you're watching him float from...
Oh, yeah. And so I started calling it Froggy's Wayward Home for Single Moms. And he would come up to me and I was like, oh, no. And he's like, what? And I'm like, I'm not going to be a part of Froggy's Wayward Home for Single Moms. I'm sorry. Like, no, that's not going to happen. So consciously, I was like, I knew better.
Yeah.
I really did. I could see the writing on the wall. I mean, like, seriously, like I've seen him now with 1, 2, now hitting on me, but now also talking to 2 or 3 other single moms in the church, right? This is a playboy, right? This is what he's doing. So I've got his number, no problem. So there's also this, what we all know happens subconsciously with like trauma bonding. Mm-hmm. So our subconsciouses are bonding. Mm-hmm. And, but consciously I'm like, no. And he is like every Sunday, and every church event.
And it doesn't help that you already know you find him attractive.
Oh yeah. No, and I'm fighting this.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, no, I have to do this right. Why is it always a man? Why is this my downfall? Like this cannot happen. Like, no.
Yeah.
And at every church event, so I mean, there's a lot of things that this church does. So there's a lot of opportunities, there's like sporting events where he shows up and he's showing off and, there's a whole lot of things going on. And so.
He's peacocking on
totally
every level.
Yeah. Totally. And so behind the scenes, I start praying for him Like God literally, like I have no other way to explain it. I'm not going to wash this away and say this didn't happen. Like this is a part of the way God has made me and the way that things happen in my life on a spiritual level. So spiritually now I start praying for him, and I start praying for him for things that I don't know and have no way of knowing. Nobody's told me anything about him. I know nothing about him. I haven't heard anything. And I'm having these God laying him on my heart for certain like toxic, traumatic events and scenarios. I begin praying for him.
So you mentioned you had friends that you were going to go to like a Halloween party and stuff with.
Yeah.
Like, did you ask them about like, hey, what do we know about Froggy?
No, I'm not like that.
Okay.
I do all this stuff secretly in my crazy little mind.
Okay.
There's no, I don't talk to people. I like, just don't. I'm not gonna be like, wouldn't want to give myself away.
Well, but then also, see, I asked because I was trying to put myself in your shoes, and I'm like, I would have wanted to ask someone, but then I wouldn't want them like, I'm trying to do this right.
Right.
I don't want people to think I'm like chasing after.
Right. And I really at this point, like, and I it comes down to like, I try to do all the research and find everything out myself in some way, shape, or form.
Before you have to ask.
Before I have to ask somebody or out it or whatever. I'm very secretive in that sense like that. Like, and a lot of that is like trauma response. Yeah. I'm not as much that way. Like now I'm a little bit more like open and free to go talk to people. But I just, at that point in my life, I'm not like that at all. Like I'm listening, I'm watching, I'm like taking it all in and I'm trying to figure it all out.
Yeah. So you're praying for him.
So I'm praying for him, and I'm still meeting with these ladies, the marriage study ladies. Mm-hmm. And I start talking to one of them, and she becomes a mentor. And this is not unusual for intercessory prayer in my life when God puts people in my life. This is probably the most specific that God has put somebody on my heart, but it's not uncommon now.
And it had it happened before this point?
No, and I think that's a good place to put it. I'm very new to this idea that, number one, I didn't know God spoke to me or God could speak to you. Like I did not know that was a thing. Like those verses in the Bible that are like, my sheep hear my voice, and people say that God talked to them. I'd never heard that before coming to this church, to Come As You Are. So I'm new to all of this. Like I have a good foundation in the Bible, and I'm very thankful for my upbringing in the church that I was in. I mean, like it's priceless.
Yeah. But this level of like
intimate relationship with God. Yes, I have never heard that before, ever. Okay. This is all new to me. So I'm like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
What the heck? Like I'm crazy. Like I've just learned that about a prayer life and listening for God.
Yeah.
And now I have all of this like information that I'm being given. And I'll be honest with you, part of me, like, our subconsciouses connect and speak to each other as the collective of humanity, how we're all connected. And it's just as trippy to think that it could just be subconscious communication that I was being made aware of. Could also be God. I'm not sure where I land on that. But it's definitely an interesting phenomenon. So, but I've experienced enough things in the supernatural in my life that it's really not that weird. So, so I talked to this lady, and she is like, oh my gosh, well, why would God have a woman praying for a man if this isn't, supposed to be a thing? Maybe this is the man that God has for you. That's why you've been taking this study, and why maybe this is the man he's bringing for you, because he wouldn't have you praying so intimately for a man. Like that's not okay. You can't pray intimately for him. So this must be the husband that God is bringing you, right? And this isn't like one conversation. These are little conversations that have gone on over, a course of over a few days or a week or whatever. And so she knows enough of his background. So the stuff I'm telling her is being verified. Like, well, yeah, that makes sense. That would be something. So it's not like I'm saying something and then she's going, yeah, that's not God, because that has nothing to do with him. Why would you be praying that? Like, that's weird. It was like, oh yeah, you are praying for him.
But she wasn't giving you information.
No information, no details. Like, it was just, yep.
What you're praying, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. And so we get to November, the end of November, so right before Thanksgiving. And this whole time she is like, you need to tell him. You need to tell him. You need to tell him. And like all that other stuff is going on where he's continually hunting me down every time I'm at an event. So the Sunday before Thanksgiving, I walk up to him and I'm like, what do you have going on? And he's like, what? And I'm like, what do you have going on? You are either in like some kind of way crazy trouble, or there's some crazy nonsense, but like God has me praying for you and it's crazy. And he goes, oh, you're the one praying for me. Because this lady had told him, there's somebody praying for you, but you need to talk to her about it. So playing like little matchmaker, right? And so he's like, yeah, can I take you out to dinner and we could talk about it? And I was like, sure, I'll go out to dinner with you, right?
Girls gotta eat.
I'm a foodie. So can I take you out to dinner turns into, sure, I'll pick you up at your mommy and daddy's house because you don't have a car. So I picked him up for dinner. So
I'm sorry. It's not even the first time I've heard it either. This is so funny. Okay, carry on.
We're driving to the restaurant and he goes, so you've been praying for me. What have you been praying for me? And I start telling him like the things that I've been praying for him about. So there was it was a lot of struggle. So I was praying over him for struggle, addiction, darkness, like a sense of death, but not like he was going to die, but like a fight for, it was more of a fighting type. There was definitely a battle going on over his life as far as whether it was a spiritual life and death or a physical life and death. I didn't know, but it wasn't like you're going to die, you need to be protected kind of. I've had those intuitions about people, but that's not it. It's it was more of like everything was about a battle.
It was just like super heavy crap.
Super heavy crap. And so I told him that, and I'm driving, and I look over, and he is flat back, glued to the passenger side door. Like sucked into the door.
As far away from you as he can get.
And his face is ghost white. And his eyes are deer in the headlight. And I look over, and I hadn't noticed him move, but I look over and I'm like, what? And he's like, I guess you talked to God. I was like, I guess so then. Like that was the end of that conversation because he was like, oh my God. Like I knew things in the details of those topics that he was like, okay. So we get to the restaurant and he is like, well, let me unpack everything that you've been praying about. So it's almost like our first date. I don't know how it would have gone if I didn't have all that insight.
Yeah.
Because our first date encompassed all of him telling me everything that he was willing to share about the things that I told him I was praying about.
Yeah.
And out of it all,
I think you said something very important in that point where you said he was willing to share.
Yes. Yeah. Because we're going to get to a point in the next episode where that becomes a very important statement. Yeah. So hold on to that, listener. Hold on to that. So little nugget right there. Out of everything he told me, which had to do with drug addiction, felony arrests, abusive situations, suicide, and an overall, as toxic as they come, lifestyle. Of all of the things that he told me, the one thing that made me want to run away, he said, all I want in life is to be happy. And I was like, oh my God, don't say that.
That gave you the ick.
That gave me the ick. Oh my God, that's like the worst thing that you can say is you just want to be happy. That's so toxic. No, happiness is not a destination. It's a journey. And like this whole idea and concept of like just being happy is, I don't even know what kick I was on.
Come as you are, Kool-Aid.
I don't know, but it gave me
and we are not dealing with happiness. Happiness is an emotion. You feel joy in the Lord.
So he gave me such ick over that statement. This is insane. All right, so his family goes out of town for Thanksgiving, and so he's gone for a week, and then he comes back after Thanksgiving. So we've texted like this whole week. We're having like lengthy conversations, like all this stuff is going on, right? He comes back from the Thanksgiving, and we go out for coffee, and two things happen on this coffee date that gave me the ick. Number one, he owned this jacket that disappeared oddly in our lives at one point. Like I still to this day don't know what happened to it, or if it just one day just never showed up again. I don't know what happened to this jacket, but early on in our relationship, it disappeared. This jacket gave me such trauma because in my heyday of like roaming around in California and like just being naughty, I knew a guy who had this same jacket, and I was like, that's not, don't ever wear that jacket again. I don't ever want to see it again. This is like not okay. And then he brought his Crown Royal bag of change to pay for our coffee, and I was like, don't ever do that again.
Red flag, red flag, red flag. If your wallet is a Crown Royal bag.
Melissa used to hang out with, I don't know a nice way to say low-life people in California. And I used to not do very good things when I was younger. And so all of this is very bad. And I'm like, he pulled out the bag, the change. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. He was like, what? And I'm like, what are you doing? And then he was like, well, we play poker over Thanksgiving, and this is my change and all my winnings. So I haven't turned it into cash. Like, and I don't have, like, I just got back. This is my poker money. It's like, I can't. And I told him why. I was like, this is bringing back, like, I will never go back to this lifestyle ever again. I don't want to participate in anybody with this lifestyle. So I called out the red flag. And he was like, okay, but like, seriously.
He explained,
I'm not that person. This is my poker money. And I'm like, okay, we'll keep going on this date. It's fine. So we're driving home from this date. He's driving me home from this date. He borrowed his mom's car, so he's driving me home. And then he looks over at me and he was like, can I keep you forever? And I was like, yes, yes, you can. Because all of this is going so wonderfully. This is like textbook where I was at. Like this was, we had a connection. Yeah. I can understand now the trauma bonding. And I've done a lot of like, I've gone down that rabbit hole so much to understand this. Like
the
how
psychological background.
The psychological is how did I become so attached and addicted to this person that they were, and this has been like trying to, because I'm still married. And I have not been able to, and I have not seen him in 2 years. I mean, I know, spoiler alert, but you're going to get those a lot. So, I mean, in future, where we are, common day right now, not in the story, we're still married, working on breaking that relationship. But I've had to spend the last 2 years dissecting that relationship and how I was so attached and connected. And then how do you grieve and unconnect from something that's not even real? It's real, but it's imaginary.
It's based off of
trauma. And so you can't mentally undo it as you heal your trauma. It makes sense. And then you disconnect, but you can't mentally undo it. It has to come through healing. The bonds are traumatic. So you have to heal the trauma to undo the bonds. And then being so connected to, like, I get it now. I've never been connected to somebody the way that I've been connected to him. And that, like, I get it when people, if people experience this on a regular basis, this is why people say there are soulmates. This is why people say that there's one person and that you'll be like in this like intense inferno type relationship with somebody. And that connection is so real and so strong. I get it. That is the type of connection that we had. And so, that brings us to, I guess I'm going to marry Froggy.
So that was his proposal.
That was it.
Keep you forever.
Can I keep you forever? That's it. I've agreed. It's the same thing. I walked into Come As You Are. Done. I'm here. And knowing now, like how that's my toxicity. That's my trauma. That's a me issue. Like I am fully responsible for all of that. Like I know it's insane. So 8 months, I was at the church for 8 months and I decided to marry the pastor's son.
That you dated for 2 months?
2 weeks.
Oh, 2 weeks.
We're talking about the Sunday before Thanksgiving and the Saturday after Thanksgiving. Can I keep you forever? Yep. You sure can. 12 years later, I'm still sitting here going, how do I'm still detaching from this.
Yeah.
Because can I keep you forever? Yeah, you probably can. I think at this point.
Yeah.
There's so much to detach. And I'm still not done. And I haven't seen the guy in 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's my life. Stay tuned for when we pick back up with my story in a few weeks. You'll be like, so Melissa married Froggy.
Burning Butterflies is a listener-supported podcast. Today's episode was brought to you by our amazing supporters on Patreon.
Follow the link in our show notes to learn how you can become a Patreon supporter too. Supporters get exclusive access to bonus content each month, including outtakes, cut content, and supporter-only episodes. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating on your listening platform.
Burning Butterflies is a production of Asha Media. Thank you for listening.